Hi everybody, welcome back again to Far From Normal's online art class. I'm excited you guys are here again today, and I'm excited about all the cool things we're going to be learning. Today we're going to take all of the things we've learned so far about drawing and we're going to put them together, and we're going to learn how to put them together in a way that makes an interesting picture. Our word for today is going to be composition. That is what we're going to focus on. In art, composition means how the picture is put together. And it's important because you can put it together in a way that's very interesting or in a way that's not as interesting. So we are going to focus on how to make sure your drawings are nice and balanced and beautiful. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today. We are going to be doing a couple projects, and for them you will need just some paper and a pencil, and if you have colored pencils you can get them out too. I am going to be doing quite a bit of talking here at the beginning though, so that you guys understand exactly what we're talking about. When we're talking about art, we want our drawings, when we're done with them, to be exciting and to be fun for the viewer to look at. And there are certain components that we can make sure we include and certain ways we can lay out our drawings so that we're sure to have that effect. I'm going to give you an example just to start out with, and you'll see the difference that we have here. This is actually a still life that I had set up a long time ago, and this is a drawing of it, and it's nice. It's a nice little drawing and everything is included, but as you can see, it's very small and right in the middle of this piece of paper, and there's a whole lot of space around it that isn't very interesting to look at. The next one, this one isn't finished, but it's a different example of the same still life, and you can see how it's sort of zoomed in. And to me, this is much more interesting to look at because you can see all the different components. The space is nice and filled up, and there's a lot to look at and a lot going on. Compared to this one, where it's just kind of a wee tiny little guitar in the middle and a lot of boring white space around it. So when we're talking about composition, this is sort of the main thing we're going to be talking about. The difference between having a nice picture and having a really cool one. So the first thing that we want to talk about a little bit is the parts of a picture. Whether it's a painting, whether it's a drawing, whether it's a photograph, there's different components. So I have another picture to show you, and this is actually one that hangs on my wall here at my house. And in it, it's got a really good example of our different parts of a picture. We have the foreground. The foreground is the part that's closest to whoever's looking at it. Then we have the midground. That's the stuff that's sort of in the middle. And then we have the background. That would be the sky. That's the stuff that's farthest away. So as you're looking at me here, if I hold this picture out, the picture is going to be in the foreground. I'm in the midground. And my wall back there is the background. Now those things are important because within your drawing you want to make sure that there's components of your picture in all of those areas. Even if you look at this one, you can see here in the foreground there's a couple of apples, and then this tree is overlapping the guitar in the midground, and the guitar sort of takes the background, and then there would be the wall behind it, which is also background. So those three components are three things that we want to make sure we're looking at when we're drawing. We don't want everything to be lined up. We don't want everything to be sort of all at the same distance away. We want it to be varied a little bit so that not anything is all the same size, because that makes a more interesting picture. The goal is to have whoever's looking at your drawing or your painting's eye to be able to move around the picture. You want them to focus on different things at different times, because that's what keeps them interested and that's what really stimulates our vision. So the other thing that we want to talk about is the idea of positive space and negative space. Now you might think positive is good and negative is bad, but that's really not the case when we're talking about art. Positive is the space that is taken up by whatever you're drawing. If you were to draw me on camera right now, I would be your positive space. And all of the space around me is negative space. It's the space that doesn't have a subject in it, if that makes sense. So it's important when we're drawing to have a balance of positive space and negative space. Just like in this one, when we have all this white this is all negative space. This, the actual drawing, is the positive space. So you don't want to have too much negative space, or then you just have a whole lot of white or whatever color your paper is. So one way to make sure that your drawing is going to come out with all of these components all put together, to make sure you have your positive and negative space balanced, and to make sure you have your background and your midground and your foreground all balanced, is to do what's called a contour drawing. I'm going to show you an example of one. So here's an example of a contour drawing. This one is of a spinning wheel, and you can see how a contour drawing is just simply the outline of whatever your subject is. With this one, it was a good idea for the artist to do it because it's a good way to make sure that everything is nice and balanced. You can tell how they really zoomed in on the spinning wheel, and you can see that there's a nice balance of positive and negative space. This is another example here where they've drawn the back of a chair, and they've actually colored in the negative space black. So by seeing it in black and white like this, you can tell that there's a nice balance between the positive and the negative space. So we're going to start working on a picture that's going to use the idea of composition and contour drawing and positive and negative space. I'm going to show you one more hint though before we get started. This is just another way to make sure your picture is nice and balanced and that you fill the whole thing. The way to do that is to divide your paper into thirds. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of paper, and first we're going to fold it into thirds like this. Just kind of fold it over and press it down. So now you have it folded into thirds this way. Now do the same thing but going the other direction. What this is going to do for you is it's going to divide your paper into such a way that you have 9 squares. So that's what you should be left with. So that when you go to draw, if you want to focus on making sure part of your drawing goes in each and every one of these squares, then you'll be sure to have your whole page filled up. Move back up.
Okay, so we're stopping here, yes.
We're not stopping, no.
Just, well, like, we're going.
Yeah, we're going back up.
Like...
Going back to these, you can see if we...
wait a minute.
Are you recording?
Yeah, but I was kind of speaking as you did that, so it might sound a little bit weird. Alright.
Start now. Going back to these pictures, if you take this one and you hold it up next to the one that's divided into thirds, clearly this picture wouldn't have something in every portion of this paper. But if we looked at this one, it would. There would be something filling each and every space. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this piece of paper and we are going to draw something on it. We are going to do a contour drawing. I have several pictures that I'm going to show you now. Now each of those things is something that I think would make a cool contour drawing. You might think something else would. So it's up to you whether you want to use one of my pictures. You can rewind it and go back and pause it, or you can go to my blog. They are up there for you to look at. And you can do your contour drawing of one of them. Once you're finished drawing the outline, what I want you to do is fill in the negative space. Just like on that picture of the chair where the negative space was what was filled in, that's what I want you to do. You don't have to color it in solid though. You can do a design, you could do some zigzags or some polka dots, whatever you want to do in the background. The idea here is to make sure you understand the concept of really filling your paper with your subject and having a good balance of positive and negative space. So I'm going to go ahead and do one now to show you guys what I come up with, and then you can work on yours. Okay, as you can see, I chose to do the scissors, and I went really close up with them. Here's the actual scissors, and I went and I zoomed in on them just to make it kind of a little bit more interesting than just a little pair of scissors in the middle of the page. So now you can see where I have my negative spaces and I have my positive spaces. Here's where we can have a little bit of fun with it. You can go ahead and trace around your contour drawing. You can fill in the background with some colors or with some designs and just make it kind of a really cool picture. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you can see what mine looks like, and you can do whatever you want with yours. Okay, so there's my finished one. You can see I just kind of had a whole lot of fun with the negative space here. I'm going to show you a couple other examples of ones that I've done before that are a little bit more detailed. This one is a pencil tip, and you can see I started with the contour drawing of it and did all the negative space, and then I went ahead and filled in the actual pencil itself. This is just another example of how you can start with something fairly small and really zoom in on it and make it a very cool picture. And you can also, with the pictures that you've done now, with these, now that you have your negative space all filled in, you can go back and do something even different with the positive space like I did in this one. And as long as you want to keep trying different things and practicing different things, you can get a lot of different effects with this kind of activity. Okay, so now you should be all finished with your picture, and what you should have is a really nice balance of positive and negative space. So as you guys continue to draw and continue to work, I just really want you to be thinking about, as you're drawing, if your pictures are balanced, looking at how you're filling the space up and how you're balancing your foreground and your midground and your background, and how you're balancing your positive and negative space. Because that's what interesting drawings and paintings really are all about, is a nice balance of those two things. So I hope you learned something new today. Next week, we're actually not going to be talking about drawing anymore. Next week, we're going to start talking about color. We're going to talk about color mixing and color blending and how to use colors to really make our pictures come alive. So next week, I will have a couple of papers on the blog for you guys to download and print. You're also going to need your colored pencils. You can use crayons or markers, but colored pencils are really preferred, and they're going to give you a little bit better results. So if you have them, make sure you have them for next week. I think that's it. I hope to see you all again next week.